Hi everybody, here's Christian from Trace5 and welcome to KeyForge. So far this has been an exclusive Netrunner channel here, but we thought we're gonna look into this new exciting game that was just released or will be released soon by Fantasy Flight Games called KeyForge. We've been actually approached by Asmodee and they asked us to live stream an upcoming preview event on the 20th of October. So if you are interested in KeyForge and if you haven't subscribed to the channel yet, then this would be a good opportunity. That way you won't miss the live stream when it comes up. We've been actually really, investing some effort into this. This is a very new game. People are not familiar with the cards. And so we want to make sure that when we live stream the event, that we will be actually able to display the cards that are being played as the live stream is happening, so people understand what is actually happening as the game is being played. So yeah, look forward to that one for sure. But today we are going to be just like, well, we're not really doing an unboxing here because this already has been opened, but we are going to do a deck introduction. So this is KeyForge is kind of like a game that is quite similar to kind of Hearthstone maybe. It's kind of like a very easy pick up and play kind of game, but it's quite unique. I kind of like it a lot more than Hearthstone. It has some unique victory conditions and it does some really smart things with the way it treats resources. And kind of like the interesting thing that it also does, kind of like the radical thing, is that it is being sold like in these kind of like pre-constructed randomly generated decks, and there is no deck building whatsoever. You just buy those things and each one of these things is unique. So every time you open a pack, it's going to be your unique deck. In fact, if you look at it, there is a card back here and you can see that the card back is also unique. So all the cards have their unique deck, and every deck that you open it will have a different image on the back here, and it will also have a different name. So this is going to be a Xylostopper, the Conductor of Fashion. All right, so let's go through the cards real quick. So the top card is always like this kind of deck list, and it has like some QR code. So I hope they will do something with this. If you are familiar with the card names, you already saw what is coming up. So the three factions in this deck are Logos, Shadows, and Dis. So Logos is more of like a tricky kind of like card draw support kind of faction. Shadows is more like steal things from your opponent kind of faction, and this is a kind of like the black in Magic, I would say, maybe something very destructive, something that disturbs their opponent's play. Oh, by the way, these decks these are not our own decks. We've borrowed those decks from our local store called Hive World. So if you're in Cologne, you definitely should check out Hive World. Thank you so much, Hive World, for supporting us this way. All right, so the first card we have here is already a very, very exciting card. This is the rare of the Dis faction for this deck. It is called A Fair Game. It is an action. And if you play it, you discard the top card of your opponent's deck and reveal their hand. You gain 1 ember for each card of the discarded card's house revealed this way. Your opponent repeats the preceding effect on you. So it's called a fair game, but it's everything but a fair game, because what you of course do is you activate this. You play out your discards. You kind of like make sure that you have very few cards on hand, and then as the final card, you're going to play a fair game, and so your opponent will have a full hand of cards, and you are likely to get a lot of ember from this, whereas the opponent is very likely not to get a lot of ember from this, because your hand will be almost empty. So the likelihood of you discarding a card that matches the house of the cards that you have on hand is very low. I really like it. It was a very, very strong card when we played this, and it also, like, I really like the name. It kind of like really rubs it in. Right, so next we have Arise, and there's actually multiple Arise in this deck, so that's kind of like really exciting. So Arise is a very strong card. It says play, choose a house, return each creature of that house from your discard pile to your hand, gain 1 chain. So off the bat, the gain 1 chain actually didn't feel very punishing to me. And the effect of being able to return creatures, a lot of creatures into your hand is really, really strong. Obviously, you want to maybe do it with this creature so you can play them immediately, but it works with other factions as well. So next one is actually a really nice combo with a rise. It's called Gateway to Dis. Destroy each creature, gain 3 chains. This is just a massive board wipe, and it's really great, especially when you have a rise, and you have 2 Arise even in this. So next 2 ones are Mind Barb. And again, there's 2 of them in here. So I really like to look at the cards in those decks that repeat themselves, because, you know, these are the cards that are likely to come up very early in the game, and I can play multiple times every time I cycle through the deck. So they kind of like, I feel like the cards that appear multiple times in the deck really define the character of a given deck. So this one says Mind Barb. It's an action. You get an Ember from this. And it says your opponent discards a random card from their hand. Not very strong, I would say. But I kind of like that you get an Ember from this. It never hurts to do that. So that's kind of nice. Poltergeist, you will also get an Ember from this. It's another action. It says use an artifact controlled by any player as if it were yours. Destroy that artifact. That is actually really good, and that actually ruined my world multiple times. It's so strong that you not only you destroy the artifact, but you also get to control it for a turn. That's actually really nice, and you even get an Ember for this. There's no downside to this, other than maybe that if your opponent's not playing any artifacts, but you know, then you have an easy time perhaps. I don't know. So this is Ember Imp. This is a creature. I think there's like multiple of those. Yeah, there's I think 2 of those in here. So yeah, it's a small little creature, but it actually has a really strong effect here. Your opponent cannot play more than 2 cards each turn while this creature is on the board. It's kind of easy to remove it, but you will see that, you know, there's ways in KeyForge to make small creatures like this stick on a board longer. And this is really strong because, you know, if your opponent can just play 2 cards each turn, that means they cannot really establish any board presence, at least not as much as they would be able to do otherwise. So this is the Terror. It's a 5-string creature this time around. It's a Demon Knight, and it says play if your opponent has no Ember, gain 2 Ember. This is a really good creature to have on your starting hand, we noticed. Sadly, there's just one of this in this deck, so the likelihood of it disappearing on the hand is a bit lower, but that's fine. So this looks very familiar, very similar. That's something I don't like about the art style of this game. Like all of the creatures, all of the cards even look very similar, but you know, maybe they will figure it out after some while. So this is called Toxin. It's another creature demon, and that does if you reap, and if you reap your opponent, so if you reap, your opponent discards a random card from their hand. So it kind of does the Mind Barb, I guess. While you reap, which is fine, which is a fine ability. It's not rocking my world, but it's okay. So this is Color of Subordination. You control this creature. It's kind of like an upgrade. This is the 2nd rare. So this is kind of interesting. There's like rares in each deck, and I think each deck has 3 rares. But those rares don't have to be in each faction. So in this case, this got 2 rares. So the first one was a Fair Game, and the second one is this one, Color of Subordination. So you equip this on your opponent's creature, and then you control it. Something that we weren't quite sure, and maybe you guys can help me out with this. So the creature still retains its house, right? So you kind of have to activate its house to actually be able to use this creature, I think. So that's kind of like weird. So I guess you just want to play it on creatures that actually are of your house. So on like Logos, Shadows, or disc creatures. And if you play it on a creature that doesn't belong to your house, then I guess you kind of like, it's kind of more like removal than actually taking control of that creature and actually using it for your purposes. So I'm not sure about that. So yeah. So I believe we're going to move over to the Logos faction. So we're going to begin with, and this is kind of like crazy here, we have 3 lab works, I think. Yeah, this is a deck with 3 lab works. So we're going to be putting a lot of cards into our archives. So lab work is an action, and you gain Ember from this, and it says archive a card. So this is kind of like a unique mechanic in KeyForge, where you can take cards from your hand and you can put it into like a special space, kind of like you can tuck them away in a place called archives. And at the beginning of your turn, you can get all of the cards from your archives in your hand. So you can kind of save your cards for later and bring them back to make like these incredible power turns. And Lab Work is a really great card to prepare those power turns. You have even 3 of them in this deck, so we can really prepare crazy power turns. This next one is an action called Phase Shift. You may play 1 non-Logos card this turn. So this is really great. It's a very flexible card, allowing you to activate Logos but still do some other stuff in the same turn. So yeah, this is the Wild Wormhole. Shout out to the Wild Wormhole podcast. Yeah, so this is a crazy card, a bit like random. So you get an Ember from this, and it's an action. It says play the top card of your deck. So just whatever you draw, you just play it. And sometimes you're just gonna play, I guess, a Gateway to this and destroy everything. So sometimes this will backfire spectacularly, but I kind of like it. It also has a very cute artwork. This is Dr. Escotera. And so this is a cyborg scientist and a 4-strength creature. When you play it, gain 1 Ember for each forge key your opponent has. I think this is a fine creature. Late game you will get 2 Ember from this, and otherwise you will just get a random 4-strength guy. It's fine. It's fine. He's fine. This is Ganymede Archivist, and he is a human scientist. He's a 3-strength creature. His ability is to, when you reap, you archive a card. Again, playing into this theme of archiving things, this is apparently a deck that can archive a lot of things. So this is a Mother. During your draw card step, refill your hand to 1 additional card. And I think we have 1 more Mother here. Yeah, we have 2 Mothers here. That's kind of weird. Do we have a 3rd Mother? No, we just have 2 Mothers. So this is a really good creature. It's pretty strong with 5 strength. And the ability is also really strong because it allows you to draw up more cards at the end of your turn. Because if you, it actually just spells it out. So I don't have to repeat it, I think. Psychic Bug is the rare, the 3rd rare in this deck. It's kind of underwhelming, I would say. It's just a 2-strength creature. You will get an Ember for playing this, so that's kind of nice. But otherwise, it just says look at your opponent's hand. When you play it, you do it, and then later on when you reap it, every time you reap with it, you also do it. Doesn't seem that strong, but on the other hand, I think in this kind of game, it allows you to kind of like prepare yourself for some surprises. If there's kind of like a board wipe coming up, you can prepare yourself, or if there's a bait and switch coming up, which is a very strong card, which we might see later on. That kind of allows you to kind of like play around those kind of things that your opponent has prepared. I don't know. It's kind of like but it doesn't kind of like rock my world. So I don't know. I'm still on the fence on this one. Research Spoko is a mutant, interestingly. When he's destroyed, archive the top card of your deck. A bit random, again playing into the archive theme of this deck, but otherwise not doing too much for us. Experimental Therapy is an upgrade. This creature belongs to all houses, and when you play it, you stun and exhaust this creature. So yeah, this is a very strong card that is also very versatile. So this allows you to kind of use a creature that doesn't belong to your house, which I think which is really strong, and it actually would also really work well with the color of subordination that we just saw previously. So you can take control of your opponent's creature, and then it belongs to all of your houses. So that would be really nice. On the other hand, you're kind of like using a lot of cards on just one creature. I guess it must be a very valuable creature then. The fact that it stuns and exhausts this creature is a bit of a downer. On the other hand, this also allows you to, technically you could try to play it offensively to kind of like stun and exhaust an opponent's creature if it's kind of like an end game kind of situation, and you kind of want to make sure that the creature cannot be activated until you forge your last key or something like this, maybe to stall the opponent a little bit. But yeah, I think most people will play this on their own creatures after they played them. So we go to the shadows, and here it is. Here's the card that everybody's like really talking about. This is Bait and Switch. It's an action, and it says, if your opponent has more amber than you, steal 1 amber. Repeat this card's effect if your opponent still has more amber than you. So you kind of like keep repeating this, I guess, until, you know, both of the players' ambers counts evens out, which is really strong, especially after you forge a key and you're down on your amber. Playing this immediately afterwards and being back up again is really, really strong. And I think a lot of people are really like shaping their entire strategies around this. And I think a lot of people also look for shadow decks and look for, you know, how many bait and switch are in there when they're picking competitive decks. So next one is Hidden Stash, and I think we have 2 of them. And that's kind of like very similar to lab work, right? So it's also say play archive a card. It's an action, and you also get a amber for this. I'm not sure how much the archiving does for this deck. I think archiving is, it seems to me like an ability that is very much something with a very high skill ceiling. So if that allows you to do really strong plays if you know exactly what you're doing, because they can take decisions what you're archiving and for what reason you're archiving it is something that really has a tremendous payoff if you know exactly what you're doing. Otherwise, it's a very tough decision. Like as a newcomer, you don't know what you're going to archive and you don't know why you're archiving it, right? You don't know when you're going to bring it back and stuff like that. So I don't know. It's the fact that there's so much archiving in this deck means that I think there's a potential to make this there's potential to make this game play extremely well if you know what you're doing. This is called a Seeker Needle. It's like a very common, very popular artifact, I think, in the Shadows. It's an artifact, so you play it on the board. And then once it's on the board, later on you can activate it and deal 1 damage to a creature. If this damage destroys this creature, you gain 1 amber. So you can like ping off maybe already hurt or small opponents' creatures, and you even get an amber for that. So that's really nice. Skeleton Key, it's another artifact. A friendly creature captures 1 amber. So capture is this mechanic where you kind of take an opponent's amber and you put it on a creature. And when a creature is destroyed, the opponent gets back the amber. But, you know, for a while, you know, the amber is gone from their supply, so they might not be able to forge a key or stuff like that. So you're kind of like snatching away or abducting their amber for a while. And so this allows you to, again, this is an artifact, so this allows you to do this every turn, which is pretty sweet. I like the flavor text here, skeletons sold separately. Special Delivery, another artifact. This one gives you an amber, and it is an Omni artifact, so you can trigger it in every faction. So you can, you have to play it in a shadow faction, but then you might be this, and you might be trigger it during a this house turn. It says sacrifice Special Delivery, deal 3 damage to a flanked creature. If this damage destroys that creature, purge it. So it's kind of like a really nice removal on a stick. Makus Asp? Massies? I don't know, Makus Asp, I guess. It's a creature's beast, and it says Skirmish. When you use this creature to fight, it is dealt no damage in return. And then it has also Poison. Any damage dealt by this creature's power during a fight destroys the damaged creature. So yeah, it's a really good thing to fight with and destroy a lot of creatures, especially the fact that the Skirmish and Poison makes it really, really strong. So yeah, that's kind of like a very scary creature. I don't know what to say. And also, this is also a pretty good one. So this is a 3-strength creature called Nexus. He's a cyborg and a thief. He's elusive, so the first time this creature is attacked each turn, no damage is dealt. So you kind of like have to attack them twice, which is a common theme with those shadow creatures. And it has an ability, Reap, use an opponent's artifact as if it were yours. So we already seen a lot of artifact control in this deck, and a lot of archiving. And so yeah, this is one of the artifact control kind of cards. Shadow Self, I already mentioned that, you know, this deck has some abilities, some opportunities to keep smaller creatures alive. And so this is one of them. Shadow Self deals no damage when fighting. It is a 9 strength creature, but that strength is just for life points. It doesn't actually do 9 damage. And damage dealt to non-spectre neighbors is dealt to Shadow Self instead. So you kind of like play it next to a creature that you want to keep alive, and all of the damage will be kind of like redirected to Shadow Self. So you actually, most of the time, you actually want to just attack Shadow Self directly. So this is Umbra, a 2-strength creature, and it has skirmish. Wait a minute, I think we have a second Umbra as well. We have 2 Umbras here. It is a 2-strength creature, Elf Thief. It has skirmish again, so it is, when you attack with it, it doesn't get any damage in return. And when you fight with it, you steal 1 ember. So this is actually a really strong combo as well. So you attack with it, you can deal 2 damage to somebody. You don't get any damage in return, and you also get one ember. Something to keep in mind that these fight effects, every time it says fight and do something like fight, steal 1, these only trigger after the fight is done. So if your creature dies in the process, then that effect won't trigger. Not a big problem here with Umbra, because Umbra again has skirmish, so she won't be dying, or he won't be dying in combat anytime soon. And finally, we have the Urchin. It's a 1-strength creature, Elf Thief, and he's again elusive. So there's like, if the first time the damage would be dealt to him, there's no damage dealt to him. So you have to attack him twice to kill him. And when you play him the first time, you steal 1 ember. So he kind of like does already when you bring him out. All right, so here is the deck list once again. Generally some insights from this deck. It's we were kind of surprised. This is a very strong deck. But we didn't have too many decks to compare it with, so we're not sure how strong this deck is. There are some really good combos that work really well. So I already talked about how there is a lot of archiving in here, right? So we already talked about how we have things like lab work, we have things like Ganymede Archivists and Hidden Stash, and all these things allow you to kind of like put a lot of cards into your archives and start using them for good stuff. There is not really a lot of really great payoff for that, we have to say. Like, there's not really something where you can get a lot of value by playing a lot of creatures or spells in one turn. Perhaps maybe the only thing that we have here for that is a fair game, which basically you could like play a lot of the archiving stuff. So your hand is empty and then you might play a fair game, or you could archive a fair game for a good moment and then get it back. I guess, maybe, I'm not sure. It's a lot of archiving, but there's not a lot of payoff for all that archiving, which is not the worst thing. And you always still get Amber, and you can still set up some really good turns. You just have to make sure that you're not really archiving into any specific combo or anything. At least I haven't discovered one. If you've seen a good combo that works well here, please let me know. There's also a lot of really good stalling. I like the Shadow Self with Ember Imp. And especially since we have 2 Ember Imps. So this is a really nasty combo that actually, well, it's not really combo, but it's kind of like a good synergy happening here. We have like these Ember Imps really trolling the opponent, not allowing them to play a lot of creatures, and the Shadow Self making sure that those Ember Imps stay in play. That's really nice, and I like it a lot. And of course, I said as before, we have Gateway to this, which is a really strong card, and we have 2 Arise, so you have like a really good board wipe, and you can get back creatures that have been destroyed previously, so you kind of can bring back your creatures and get an upper hand like this. And you kind of almost need it, because there's not a lot of really good heavy hitters in this deck. So it's really this deck really depends on those actions, making sure that you control the board state with those actions, and less with any strong creatures that can whip their opponent's butt. And maybe a third theme that I kind of really liked is kind of like the ability of control, of controlling the stuff that your opponent has. So you can control your opponent's creature. but you also control their artifacts with the Poltergeist or the Nexus here. And I played this deck with a deck that was using quite a lot of artifacts, so this was a really nasty surprise, seeing my creatures or my artifacts in this case being controlled by the opponent, kind of like turning the tables and using my own weapons against myself. That was really nasty. But of course we also have to mention that this deck is also really strong simply because we have Bait and Switch in here. It's a card that everybody's talking about this, and I think if a shadow deck or a deck that has the shadow house has Bait and Switch in here, I think that makes it already kind of like a pretty good baseline kind of deck. I think that might do well competitively. So yeah, that's pretty much it. Let me know if you found any combos, if you agree or disagree with my impressions. I haven't played this deck for a lot of times, just a couple of games, so I might be wrong on my impressions. And again, this is a game that is very fresh and new, so I'm open to your suggestions about this. And of course, remember, I would like to remind you that we are going to be live streaming the preview event of KeyForge on the October the 20th. So make sure you subscribe to this channel so you get a notification when we go online. Otherwise, there is a second deck I also want to show you guys. So see you in the next video. Bye bye.